This is Terms of Reference. I'm your host, Stephen Laddick. David Auerbach is a co-founder of Sanergy, a pioneering social enterprise in Nairobi, Kenya, dedicated to building healthy, prosperous communities in Africa's informal settlements by making hygienic sanitation affordable and accessible for everyone, forever. Previously, David co-ran Partnerships at Endeavor, a nonprofit that helps high-impact entrepreneurs in the developing world. He served as the deputy chair for Poverty Alleviation at the Clinton Global Initiative from 2005 to 2006, and he taught in Central China for 2 years as a Yale-China Teaching Fellow. David began his career researching foreign policy at the Center for American Progress. David is also an Ashoka, an Echoing Green, and a Rainer Arnhold Fellow. I spoke with David in Nairobi, Kenya. Hello, David. Thank you so much for being on the Terms of Reference podcast today.
Hi, Stephen. It's great to be here.
David, where are you sitting today?
I am here in Nairobi, Kenya, sitting at the Sanergy headquarters.
All right. And I assume, we're recording this in early August in 2015. I assume that you guys successfully survived Obama mania.
Yes. Kenya's export to the U.S. has finally returned to the U.S.
Excellent. David, why don't we start? You're the co-founder of an organization called Sanergy. Why don't you give us an update or brief on what is it that Sanergy does and, sort of why you're sitting in Kenya right now?
Sure. So Sanergy builds healthy, prosperous communities in urban slums by making hygienic sanitation accessible and affordable for everyone forever. And the way that we do that is by building low-cost, high-quality toilets, which we call Fresh Life toilets, which we then franchise to people living in informal settlements who run it either as a business or as a value-add service to tenants or at community institutions like schools. And then we provide important support services like access to finance, training, marketing, and branding. We then collect the waste and take it out of the community to a centralized facility where we're then converting it into useful byproducts like organic fertilizer, which we then sell onto farms, boosting agricultural productivity.
Wow, it seems like a complete life cycle business model. Tell me about why is this important in Kenya? Why now?
Sure. This is a huge important challenge to be tackling right now. Around the world, it's about 4.1 billion people who lack access to total hygienic sanitation. So that actually includes not only just bad toilets, but also where the waste goes. Where we work here in Kenya, there's 8 million people living in slums who lack access to hygienic sanitation. This has a huge impact, killing nearly 25,000 children every single year, and a huge economic impact too. The Kenyan economy loses something like $1 million $1 million per day in lost productivity and extra health bills.
Wow, that's powerful. Tell me about you're a co-founder of this organization with two other people. I think it's Nathan Cook and Lindsay Stradley. What was the genesis of the idea? Did you guys meet somewhere over coffee one day and said, "Hey, we want to go work in Kenya"? Or what was actually? I think there's actually a fourth co-founder as well. I would hate to forget him as well. I'm going to ruin his name.
Yeah.
I'm going to ruin his name. It's Valabaheni.
Ani Valabaheni, yeah.
Okay, so I missed his name there. But so the four co-founders, how did you guys come together to start this?
Yeah, so we all met while we were at graduate school at MIT, and we came together in a class called Development Ventures, which challenges you to come up with a solution to a pressing poverty issue that affects over 1 billion people. This is MIT, so of course people are thinking about the power of technology and cell phones, but we were really interested in sanitation. We all had very different experiences that brought us to this. For me personally, it had been as a teacher in China, and where I lived for 2 years, and witnessing and experiencing firsthand the challenges that came with the lack of access to good toilets.
So when you guys sat down in this class, was this the first idea you put on the table and you're like, wow, you really came together? Or what else did you spitball?
Yeah, no, we really actually thought about it sort of from two different ways. One, why was there so many terrible toilets, which is sort of an interesting question for us. And then secondly, if there was a way to extract value from waste, so thinking of it rather than a cost, but as an opportunity, could you then incentivize everyone in the sanitation value chain to participate, which would ultimately lead to much better toilets for residents of slums?
And so you've said that quite eloquently, and to someone with inexperienced ears, what does that mean by understanding the whole value chain? How do you differ from? I've been lucky enough. I've been in Haiti. I've been in Ethiopia. I've been in lots of other people, just like most of our listeners. How does your model differ from what a typical sanitation solution looks like? I mean, you explained it a little bit more, but try to give us a little more detail.
Sure, that's a great question. And so, our model is unique because it does tackle what we call the full value chain. So not only are we providing good toilets, but we're also ensuring that those toilets are kept clean and open, and that the waste is then collected and properly treated, and then and properly treated. Most models that you see for sanitation only does one part of that. So, for example, one organization might just sell toilets and leave it up to the community to ensure that they are kept clean or that the waste is collected. Or another organization might just do waste collection, but then doesn't have toilets to necessarily source from, or has a way of guaranteeing that the waste is treated. And so that leads to a lot of fragmentation in the value chain, which ultimately means that the problem is not solved.
So most of the hygiene work that you hear about these days is donor funded. What's your business model? How do you guys stay afloat? Where'd you get your money to start with?
Sure. So we started by taking advantage of being in graduate school, and we're able to enter a bunch of business plan competitions and social enterprise fellowships that gave us the seed capital we needed to get things off the ground. Once we were on the ground, so we launched full time in our first toilets opened November of 2011. We were then able to raise a combination of equity of equity from impact investors, and we continue to receive grants from organizations that are very interested in the social outcomes that we're able to accomplish.
Is your ultimate arc to continue to have a mix of revenue, grants, and contracts maybe, or do you have an ultimate sustainability moment that you're looking at, a break even?
Yeah, I mean, we look at it from wanting to ultimately be self-sustaining. But we also recognize that within some of the communities where we work, the most marginalized, either in terms of being the poorest or living in the least accessible areas, it will always be difficult for there to be a market-based approach to solving the challenge there. And, in a typical functioning economy, the government might step in and provide that support. But given that we work in informal settlements, we're not there yet. And so we think that, there will always be some room for grants to be able to ensure that we're serving everybody.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. You've been doing this since 2011. So over the past 3 or 4 years here, has there been a particular moment where you've set up a system or a community has come together where you were just blown away by the response, or you experienced something that you didn't expect that you could tell us about? Maybe some special story that you like to tell everyone?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I think, one of our very first entrepreneurs is a woman named Agnes Kwamboka. And, she opened a Fresh Life toilet, I think it was very early in 2012. And, shortly thereafter, opened 2 additional toilets too. And we interviewed her about, tried to understand sort of how this was changing her life. And, of course, there was she was proud that she was now able to, ensure that her kids had access to safe sanitation, that her family didn't have to go out at night to find a toilet, that she was running a good business. But, the other more powerful thing was that she used to actually make a sort of illegal home brew as a way of raising money or earning an income. And that exposed her to a lot of graft from the police, and then also just there was an implicit assumption that she was involved in prostitution. And, she said that once she was able to launch Fresh Life Toilets, the police stopped harassing her, and those assumptions went away too. And so her sense of dignity, combined with now making a great income, has really changed her life. And when I hear stories like that, I'm just blown away.
Yeah, that's powerful.
You can't ever expect that to be what comes of this, and yet it does, and that's when I know we're doing a good job.
One more question about the business before we sort of turn the corner. Do you have a waiting list right now? Are you have a real active sales process? Are you expanding outside of Kenya? What's What's sort of the situation right now?
Yeah, I mean, right now, we're in the midst of expanding into a whole new slum called Mathare. So right now we work mainly in a slum called Makuru, which is about a 500,000 person slum in the southeast corner of Nairobi. And now we're doing our first attempt at expanding into another slum called Mathare, which is about 600,000 people. And combined, they equal about 40% of the entire slum population in Nairobi. Yeah, I mean, sales are going well. We have a really active sales pipeline, and what's also cool is that we've started to develop new models where we work with landlords so that they're able to provide sanitation to tenants, and schools so they're able to provide sanitation to students and teachers. And those models are really getting great new traction, which is helping us have a really good, diverse sales offering, or product offering to the communities we're serving.
The next sort of question I have for you is, how did you get into this place where you're at, personally? You mentioned that you spent a couple of years in China doing some schoolwork there. Are you someone who woke up, in your teenage years and said, I know that I want to have a service career? How'd you find yourself in this line of business?
Well, it's fine. I mean, it's funny. 2 years ago, I was at a family reunion where there was about 65, 70 people there. We went around and everyone said what they were doing. It was, everyone ranged from teachers to social workers to theologians, and not a single person worked completely for the private sector.
You didn't have any investment bankers around the table getting real uncomfortable?
Yeah, exactly. So, part of this is definitely, I think, my DNA, but in terms of my career, I started actually at the Center for American Progress in Washington, straight out of college, back in 2003. And, I was being asked to write policy briefs and, all sorts of things like that in the foreign policy shop there. And I realized, I hadn't been out in the world and seen anything. And so that led me to teaching in China for 2 years, where, the teaching was very grounding, but it also gave me the opportunity to sort of see how other people live outside of the U.S. And that's when I got really hooked into the idea of a career in international development. From there, I went to the Clinton Foundation and helped build partnerships at the Clinton Global Initiative. And then I went to Endeavor, which is this nonprofit in New York that does this work with high-impact entrepreneurs, so entrepreneurs running strictly for-profit businesses in the developing world. And I just saw the power of market-based approaches to solving challenges there. And, but then when I looked around about who I admired the most, it was clearly entrepreneurs. But I didn't have an idea. And so that's what took me to graduate school at MIT, where, I was fortunate to meet my co-founders, and we developed this idea together. And then the rest of that is history.
Is there a time along the way when, either when you were at Endeavor or now in Sanergy over the last 3 or 4 years here, where you saw either someone or you yourself just fell flat on your face and, you had a failure? And what did you do to sort of pick yourself up or turn the corner and keep going?
Well, any entrepreneur who tells you that they have not faced failure on a daily basis is probably not being wholly honest with you.
That was so politically correct.
But I think, for me, this is all about sort of teamwork. It's all about teamwork. I have my co-founders, and we knew going into this that we're trying to solve something that no one's ever solved before, right? That's enormous, and the notion that we would be able to get it right the first time or even the 10th time is sort of preposterous. And yet, of course, we're each demanding people, and we each expect things to go well, and want it to work. And so when it doesn't, that's humbling. But then you also do have your teammates who, they're there to pick you up and remind you that this is a long journey that isn't going to be solved each day. And so I would say just, with them, we've been able to have success.
Speaking of which, so perhaps one of the challenges is, as you said, you're not from Kenya originally, but you find yourself living there now. How are you dealing with those challenges of, calling Kenya home now and sort of growing as a person in that way? Or, is this where you want to be and this is where you expect to be for the next 5 or 10 years? Or does that also present some unique challenges for you?
Yeah, no, I mean, I love Kenya, first of all. And now I've been here nearly 5 years and met my wife here. So, definitely laying roots to be here for a long time. I find Kenya to be a wonderful place to actually to go into social enterprise because, you basically have a lot of talented people who are interested in enacting social change. And you have a really strong entrepreneurial ecosystem. So you have everything from the iHub to the 1 Acre Fund to Bridge International to MCOPA, all of these incredible social enterprises that we can learn from and partner with. From that perspective, it makes my professional life really, really satisfying too.
Is there ever any talk between you and your co-founders to say, I wish I was back in one of those other hubs like the UK or Washington, D.C. or something like that?
No, not really. Actually, we really, as a company, we really made a strong commitment at the beginning that we wanted to be close to where the operations were because, again, you're trying to solve a challenge that no one's solved before. And so we believe that being as close to the action as possible is really, really important. At the same time, you have to do things that were, maybe typical global headquarters or that are typical of maybe global headquarters, right? So you're trying to build systems and processes and fundraising shops and all of that, and you're doing that from here. And so while sometimes, that can be a little bit harder because things take a little bit longer, you see the trade-off of being close to the action as much more valuable.
What about pushback from other traditional, sanitation providers? Have you found any disgruntled other actors in the space right now, or is it pretty much everybody's rooting for you and hoping that you succeed?
Well, two ways of looking at that, right? One is actually sort of what's happening in terms of the typical traditional sanitation providers within the communities we serve. And actually, if you go to our blog today, we actually have a story about a guy named Peter Okari, who has been a traditional sanitation provider for several years and has provided inferior sanitation solutions before, and now has switched over to what we're offering through Fresh Life. And he is delighted. He's making more money. He's serving better his customers with a better service. And so we do see that acceptance from other sanitation providers in the community. And then, sort of within the larger sanitation NGO sector, I think people, we've been really good at being able to build partnerships and being very, I think quite humble or modest about sort of what we've achieved so far. We're not claiming that that we've worked it all out. And then being able to, meet people and learn from them is really valuable and has garnered respect. One example is that our board chair is Nick Breslin, who used to be the CEO of Water for People up until a couple of months ago. And these guys are, they're really huge in the water and sanitation space. And they were, Ned was beyond thrilled to be able to take us under his wing. And that's been really valuable for us.
So you're innovators right now. You've got a unique model that you're putting out there. What's the next 5 years look like? What are the biggest challenges that you've already identified that you're innovating and you're tweaking your model to overcome? And how do you see that happening?
Yeah, over the next 5 years, the idea is for us to, really focus it's to really grow quickly, right? You really want to be able, right now we serve about 30,000 people per day. We would love for that to be, to approach 500,000 in the next 5 years. To do that, we have to improve upon our distribution models to make sure that we're offering products that are really appealing to residents of informal settlements. And we have to do a lot more behavior change research, which we've started with in partnership with Yale University and IPA, Innovations for Poverty Action, to really understand what behavior changes are needed to get people to adapt hygienic sanitation in the communities that we serve.
Two more questions for you. One, you've been living in Kenya now for 5 years. You've been on this path for longer. When you either come back to the States or you're traveling around and you meet somebody who's not in this space or you meet an old friend, what's your go-to story? You're sitting there either having a beer or drinking a cup of coffee or something, and it's that one story that you always pull out about what it is that you do or something that happened.
Yeah, I mean, I really like to talk about our team. I think about sort of that we've built. We have about 240 people on staff now. 93% of them are Kenyan, and 55% are from the slums, and 40% are under 25 when they join us. And so what we've taken on, or what we've developed as a company, is not just great results in terms of providing hygienic sanitation, but also building a company here. So I think about sort of just yesterday, I was with one of our original sales associates, Bonnie, who he's been with us from the very beginning. He's our very first sales associate, and sort of watching him grow, as a guy who was pretty timid and shy about selling, to sort of someone who knows exactly what his quota is, how he's going to hit it, how he builds his lead pipeline, how he's going to sell to different customers, who's honest with him and who's sort of taking him for a ride, and just watching his confidence and his demeanor now is just, that for me is very rewarding, and helps me know that we're doing something that's going to have a real lasting impact.
That's a fantastic story. My last question is one that I ask every guest here on Terms of Reference. And, it's pretty simple. You find yourself in a position of success right now. You've got a growing concern. It's innovative, and, the future is bright. Many of our listeners are either coming out of a master's degree right now, eager to get their first position in this industry, or they're transitioning from the private sector or from some other completely unrelated industry. What is your one or two pieces of advice to those people about how to create the same kind of sustainability and success that you have?
Yeah. So, I sort of frame it in two different ways. One would be just, if you're someone who has an idea that you think is valid, that you think could work, you have to listen. You have to get out into the communities that you're looking to serve and the target customers that you have, and just, hear them out. You can't, you need community buy-in first and foremost, and hearing people and, directly about what their problems are and how they imagine them being solved will be extremely insightful for you. Second is that you really can't have enough mentors, and, you need to be able to devote the time to talk to and listen to people who, they've almost certainly not done the same thing that you're trying to do, but strands of what you are doing, they have done. And being, unabashed about asking for help and receiving guidance is really great. And I think it is really important. And I think, Sanergy, I think we've really thrived because we just have so many people who are willing to help us, but it does take the courage to ask for that help. And I think we do that pretty well. And I'd advise you all to do that.
David, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today.
Hey, no worries, and all the best, and happy to chat with any of your listeners. info@saner.gy is us. So.
Super cool. I'll make sure that they know how to get in touch with you through the Sanergy website.
Great. Thanks a lot.
You've been listening to the Terms of Reference podcast from 8preneur.com. Subscribe to us on iTunes.